Keeper of the Lost Cities Neverseen, Chapter 24. Calla and Mr. Forkle still hadn't returned by bedtime. Even the reverie bells couldn't calm Sophie's tangled dreams. Lady Giselle's wounded face kept morphing into Gethin's as he sat chained in his cell. Squall loomed over him as he screamed in Keith's mom's voice. Then his fingernails turned to ice and everything splattered red. She dragged herself out of bed at sunrise, hoping a walk by the river would help clear her head. A soft song rustled through the forest, catching her attention. She raced into the trees, chasing the sound to a small clearing where she found Calla, singing with her palms pressed against one of the trunks. "You're back," she said, startling Calla so much the poor gnome almost fell over. "Sorry, I'm just glad you're okay. I was worried you weren't home last night." "Oh, we only returned an hour ago. Wanted to make sure that we hadn't missed anything." "And?" Sophie pressed. Calla slumped against the tree. "And we found nothing. No shielded trees, no whispers of warnings in the roots. The Black Swan is moving one of Gethin's dwarven guards to keep an eye on the area, but it's possible that will only make the Neverseen change their plan." "You have any idea what they're up to?" "I don't. And that's what terrifies me. In all my 4,329 years on this planet..." "4,000?" Sophie interrupted. "You're 4,329 years old?" She knew the elves had an indefinite lifespan, so it wasn't that big of a stretch to know that gnomes did too. But that number was too huge to fit in her brain. "I believe that's the right age," Calla agreed. "Though there have been stretches where I lost count. But in all that time, I've never felt anything like the worry I felt coming from Brackendale. That's why I took such a risk to bring you and Bianna to investigate. Whatever we're facing is unlike anything I've experienced. The melodies reminded me of our ancient warnings." "Warnings?" Sophie repeated. "Songs so old we don't even know who sang them first. They warn of great withering before an endless fall. But our history holds no record of any such occurrence." Sophie wasn't a fan of the word endless. "But do you believe there's a cure?" Calla pressed her ear against the tree. "I believe nature always finds a way, but it also does so in its own timeline. We must hope that timeline is faster than the Neverseen, or whoever is behind this plague." Sophie wanted to do more than hope. She wanted to act. They had to be missing something, some deeper meaning behind what Gethin had said, or some details in the Exilium records they'd overlooked to help find the Cyanopath. She returned to her treehouse, prepared to gather her friends and come up with a plan. But they'd already gathered, all except Keith, and were waiting around the waterfall. Dex held up a gadget that looked even crazier than his Vader. "I figured out how to break into the Luminaria database." It looked like he'd just wired pieces of imparters together and shaped them into a pyramid, with 6 long antennas sticking out of the top point. 5 were made of different metals: gold, silver, bronze, copper, and iron. And the 6th looked like a twig. "I know the stick part is weird," Dex said, "but I needed this thing to broadcast to all 6 technologies. The elves, ogres, trolls, goblins, and dwarves were easy to figure out, but I had no idea what to do for the gnomes. I tried solar-powered stuff, but it still seemed too techy. Then I saw some branches on the ground and thought, why not? Only Dex would decide to jab a gadget with a stick." "You should have heard him squeal when it worked," Dex said. "I thought a banshee had snuck into the room." "Ignore my son," Della told Dex. "You deserve to be excited." "Yeah, I can't believe you figured it out so fast," Bianna told him. Sophie smiled. "Dex is a genius." Dex's grin turned supernova. He pressed the base of the gadget, making the pyramid glow green. He had to wave it around a few times, like when humans are trying to search for a stronger cell phone signal. But eventually, a crackly hum filled the room, and the buzzing hologram appeared. Sophie squinted at the image. "Is that a scroll?" "A super old one. The database is filled with them. I've just started going through. I was looking for stuff about the Wildwood colony, but this one caught my eye because of all the smudges." He pointed to the black smears covering whole paragraphs. "These runes have been blacked out, which means someone is trying to keep something secret, but they must have run low on ink because at the end it's thin enough for a few words to peek through. And if I'm reading them right, it proves the ogres have something that gives them leverage with the council. It took a moment for the gravity of the revelation to set in. So, you're saying the ogres have a way to control the counselors? Sophie asked. It kind of makes sense, Fitz said quietly. Alvar's always talking about the crazy restrictions the ogres put on him when he visits Ravagog, and how none of the other creatures would get away with that. Right, Dex agreed. And the really weird part is, you can see right in the treaty, I checked, the treaties for the other species basically say, we will allow you to remain free because you will do whatever we tell you. But the ogres treaty is like, we promise we won't use our abilities on you, or visit your cities, or ask too many questions about anything you're doing. And you're allowed to continue building weapons as long as you promise not to use them, and you can do all kinds of other dangerous things too because we won't stop you, and if you do, you have the right to declare war. Why would the counselors agree to any of this? It doesn't make sense until you look at this. He twisted the gadget again, and the hologram zoomed in on part of the scroll where the ink had run thin. Sophie squinted at the runes peeking through the faded ink. What does it say? You can't read it? Bianna asked her. Only if it's written in the Black Swan's code. Mr. Forkel had taught her to translate their species' cipher runes, which came in handy until she needed to read anything in normal runes. Great plan, guys. It's hard to tell without most of the context, Dex said, but this sentence is talking about how the ogres will retain possession of something that's clearly super important. And the word they tried to black out is Dracostomes. Sophie frowned. That sounds like some sort of fungus. So, it doesn't trigger any memories? Dex asked. His shoulders slumped when she shook her head. I was hoping I'd say the word and the memory would click and you'd have all the answers. Sophie sighed. Welcome to working with the Black Swan. It's full of disappointments. Or maybe the Black Swan doesn't know either, Fitz reminded them. Well, whatever they are, they seem to be something the council really wants, Dex said. And I'm guessing the Neverseen allied with the ogres because of them. Probably after they realized they'd never get their hands on Sylvanie and Greyfell. Wouldn't that explain why the council's gotten so weird lately? Haven't their craziest decisions happened since the ogres got involved? Then suddenly Sophie was the #1 enemy, and they were vowing to hunt down the Black Swan instead of the Neverseen. It explains a lot, Della agreed. Alden and I have had many conversations about how the ogres slaughtered hundreds of goblins without punishment. They also stole the gnomes' homeland, dammed up the river, and starved the gnomes out. And even after the gnomes came to us for aid, the ancient council let the ogres keep Sarenvale as part of the treaty. I thought that was because the ogres refused to leave, Fitz said. So the only way to force them out would have been war. That's true, Della agreed. And they offered the gnomes protection in the lost cities, and not because they suspected how useful the gnomes would become. I've heard stories from the ancient packers about how stunned they were the first time the gnomes shared their harvests, and it was the gnomes who volunteered to help with other tasks. Still, the council made the trolls return the dwarven mines they'd stolen. But in any case, the trolls needed our medicine. Exactly, Dex said. And these Dracostomes seem to work the opposite way. Something the council wants, or maybe something they're afraid of, that gives the ogres the upper hand. But what are they? Bianna asked. What would make the council grant the ogres' demands? A question formed in Sophie's mind, one she didn't even want to ask, even after all the times the council had sided against her. Do you think it has something to do with the plague? She whispered. I thought of that, Dex said, but this scroll is old. So if the ogres had the Dracostomes all this time, why would they suddenly be like, let's use it on Wildwood? Sophie didn't have an answer. Could trying to read King Dimitar's mind have been that big of a deal? And that's all you've found about the Dracostomes? She asked. So far, but there's a lot to sort through. Dex tapped his gadgets, shutting down the hologram. I'll search it as fast as I can, but right now, I have to check each scroll one by one. I'm hoping I can make some tweaks to search by keyword or something. Please be careful, Della said. It's amazing that you've been able to gain access this quickly, but doesn't that worry you? I don't mean as an insult. You're clearly a brilliant technopath, but doesn't it almost seem too easy? Dex flipped over the gadget to show her a tightly coiled wire. Don't worry. This emits a signal that erases any trace of where I've been. No one will have any idea I was there. Assuming you haven't missed a security protocol, Della reminded him. Let's all try not to underestimate the Council. If these Dracotomes are a crucial secret, they'll have gone to great lengths to protect it. She's right, Sophie said. And we should be really careful who we tell about this, especially Calla. If the Dracostomes were related to the plague, they wouldn't just have proof that the ogres were behind it. They'd have proof the Council knew this could happen and never warned the gnomes.